Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here to join us for our new edition of the 49er Industry Chat. My name is Noemi Guevara, and I am your host and the Director of Alumni Engagement here at Cal State Long Beach. Before we start our session, before I introduce our next speaker, I would like to let you know that this is being recorded and it will be available on demand on our website at csulb.edu/alumni. Now, it's my great honor to introduce our next speaker, Kim Armstrong, who is our CSULB Alumni Council Vice President and a three-time graduate from the beach from 1988, 1991, and 1994. Thank you, Kim, for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Noemi. I really appreciate it. And good evening to everyone out there. My name is Kim Armstrong. She said I am so honored to be your moderator this evening for this very special session. On behalf of the CSULB alumni, I would like to welcome you as well. Before I introduce our amazing guest speaker, just a couple of logistics. Everyone was muted upon entry, and I know you're going to have lots of questions for our speaker. I know I do. So if you do have questions, please feel free to use the chat window. And so there's a little button at the bottom. You can click chat and you can type in all your questions. And we will be engaging throughout. So I'll be kind of moderating the questions throughout. So we'll take some during the presentation if it's related, and then we'll catch a bunch at the end. So now I have this huge, great honor to introduce our speaker this evening for our 49er Industry Chat, Jonathan Michael Castillo. Jonathan Michael Castillo is a photographer, visual artist, and educator based in Chicago, working in the fine arts, editorial, and commercial markets. He is the 2019-2020 recipient of the Diane Dammeyer Fellowship in Photographic Arts and Social Issues. Jonathan is a recent nominee for the 2020 Hyde Park Center's Ground Floor Biennial in Chicago and a finalist for the WMA Commission in Hong Kong. His work has been featured in The New Yorker, one of my favorites, Wired, another one of my favorites, and as well as CBS Los Angeles, Brazil's G1 Global. He has discussed photography on BBC Radio World Update and locally on our very own KPCC and KCRW. Jonathan is one of 50 artists selected for Chicago's Department of Cultural Affairs 2020-2021 pre-qualified list for public art commissions. His exhibitions include those at Photo LA 2020, the Center for Creative Photography, the Aperture Gallery, the House of Lucy, and Filter Photo Gallery. Jonathan is represented by Samuel Maenhoudt Gallery in Belgium, and his first solo show is scheduled for this August at the California Museum of Art in Thousand Oaks. I know I'm excited about that. Of course, his education includes a BFA from Long Beach State, and he also has a MFA from Columbia College of Chicago. That was a lot. We are so honored. Thank you so much, Jonathan. So everyone, please welcome Jonathan Michael Castillo. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Let me share my screen here. Everyone see my slide just fine? Okay. So I'm going to do this presentation a little differently than I normally would do. I'm going to not only just show you the work that I'm like most proud of, but I'm going to kind of show you work that I literally just do to pay the bills. Some of this work you'll never see on my main website, and I'll talk about the reasons for that. I'm going to discuss the difference between making personal work and doing work for others, and the best case scenario when you can do work for others that aligns with your personal interests. Those of you that know me or my work have probably seen this image. I made it back in the fall of 2010 during my intermediate photography class at Cal State University Long Beach. It's part of my ongoing project, Car Culture. This project is the work that's helped launch my career in photography. Most of the features, radio interviews, my gallery representation, and all my notable exhibitions on my CV that were just listed in my bio. Those are all mostly related to this work. The project is all done around LA. They're photographs of people in their cars, but the kind of twist is that they're candidly made. People don't know they're being photographed. And what I do is I drive around the city in my car. I have a camera mounted in the back of my car, and whoever pulls up behind me at a stoplight is my subject. This is the person that I'm photographing. There's a total element of chance and randomness to it. And there's kind of a little extra twist that you can kind of see when you look at the images. If you notice that the person in the center in the car you can see them really well. They're very well lit, but if you look at the cars in the background, you can't really see the people in those cars. So what I'm doing is I have a lighting car. I have a car rigged with some strobe lighting that pulls up alongside them. So when I go to take the picture, it flashes and person in the car, but also balance that with the landscape. So they're portraits of people in their cars in LA, but they are also a collective portrait of the city, and kind of a time capsule of the time of Los Angeles at different times that I've been doing this. I've been working on it for about 10 years now. Some of the images. Some of these I made back when I was an undergrad at Cal State Long Beach, and some of them are more recently, like this one was made last summer. So I kind of want to give just a real kind of path for like how something that I started literally in my intermediate photography class then ends up in the New Yorker. So, because it seems like, I think most people would think like, that's just crazy. Like, how does that happen? But so it started like this. I saw some work at the LA County Museum of Art that I really loved. And it was a guy who was photographing people walking on the streets in New York. It's Philip Lorca de Corsia's Head series. And what I did is I loved it so much, I decided I was gonna go try my own version of it. So I went back to my community college, Moorpark College, and I did my own version of it. And then when I got to Cal State Long Beach, I decided I needed to change this somehow and make it more my own, because it was fun, but it was just kind of like a lesser version of what this other well-known artist, like he's like a really well-known artist, had done. So I said, well, no one walks in LA, people are in their cars, and I just kind of extrapolated out, like maybe I should try doing this with people in their cars. So I started doing it at Cal State Long Beach, spent the whole time I was there working on this project. And then I submitted it to a blog, Petapixel, and they wrote a feature on it because they just liked the techiness of it. Then I took the work to the Palm Springs Photo Festival, and I went and I showed the work in portfolio reviews. And at the portfolio reviews, I met the editor for Wired. So I literally paid money to go show my work. It's like speed dating with photo editors, and showed that work to the editor from Wired. She wanted to publish it, so she published it. And then after Wired published it, then the BBC called me, emailed me, and the public radio stations emailed me. And then suddenly there were there was just a lot of online press. And at this point, I'm a couple years out of Cal State Long Beach. The work's been published in a bunch of places, and I've still made no money from the work. It's just, a cool project that people like, and, hasn't really done anything other than kind of get my foot in the door in places. So flash forward a bunch of years, and I'm, done with my master's degree, and someone shoots me an email, and it's this guy who writes for the New Yorker, and he says he saw the older articles, and he was wondering if I was still doing it. I said, of course. And he said, well, send me some new images. I'll write a feature and we'll pitch it to the New Yorker. And then that ended up in the New Yorker. And then the gallery saw it and asked if I would like representation. So I said yes. And then we took it to Photo LA, which is what you're seeing right here. And then the California Museum of Art saw it at Photo LA. So I'm kind of drawing an arc from going as a student to a show at the LA County Museum of Art, being inspired by someone else's work, literally just copying it and trying my own version of it, to then getting it published all the way to the New Yorker. So that's kind of how things work sometimes. You just have to put work out there, and things will happen. My professor from Cal State, my professor from Columbia College, Chicago, Dawood Bey, always says, if you make good work and show it to people, it's impossible that things won't happen, you know, like, so the car culture work is great. And it's work that I continue to do, and it's a lot of fun. But one of the things I don't, that is less fulfilling for me in that work is that I'm photographing people candidly. And I've moved a little more, while I continue to do the car culture work, I've moved more into my more recent projects being more kind of one-on-one, collaborative, socially engaged photography. This is a project I started when I was living in China. I moved to China in 2016, several years after I left Cal State Long Beach. And I started doing this photographing in this building called Chungking Mansions, which is kind of the hub of the non-Chinese immigrant community in Hong Kong. And I've been working on this project for several years now, photographed close to 100 people for this project. And it's portraits of people that are part of the community, that own businesses there. You know, there's kind of an immigration theme going on in this and some of my other work, which you'll see. You know, it's both about place and community and individual portraits of people in those places. In Chungking Mansions, there's a large community of asylum seekers and refugees. I got to meet a bunch of those people, and I started sitting in on this class that they would do with a American anthropologist who wrote the book about the place. And through that, through those connections, some of these portraits, you know, came to be a little later. But it took a couple of years of going, you know, just visiting and going back and meeting people and having conversations, asking people if I could photograph their restaurant, asking if I could make a portrait of someone. So what's really interesting about this place is it's like the unofficial African quarter of the city. It's little India, little Pakistan. You know, there's a Nepalese community. It's kind of all those things in one giant building. It's very different than in America, where we have our like ethnic enclaves in a city. You know, there's an area of the city, but in Hong Kong, everyone that's kind of part of that working class immigrant community is all there, regardless of you know, nationality and country of origin. So this is Dennis. He's the head of security there. He grew up in Chungking Mansions. This is John. He's from Iran. He fled Iran. He was a victim of state-sponsored torture by the Iranian police, who'd connected him to protests that some of his friends had been in, and so they you know, rounded him up a couple times, and then he ended up fleeing for his life and ended up in Hong Kong. And he's still there today. So there's this project, that project, my Chungking Mansions project, which I started when I was living in China, and then I moved to Chicago, and I started this new project for my graduate. Yeah.
Sorry, we're starting to get some questions, and before
Sure.
I think we move too far off of that, your images are just absolutely amazing. And I know what I'm seeing is sort of a contrast between folks that you're working with one-on-one, and then you know, folks that don't know they're being photographed. And we do have a couple questions about, you know, how do you deal with the privacy issues on the photography of you know, subjects that don't necessarily know they're being photographed, right? In contrast to the ones that do. Would you mind addressing that before we move forward?
Yeah, so when it comes to photographing people on the street, my car culture project, I see that project like any other street photography project. You know, street photography is covered under the freedom of speech. So your ability to take pictures in public is not to be impinged, you know, by anyone. So you can go do that. Whether it's polite is another discussion. And most people, when I photograph them, don't even react. Some people will pull up alongside me and go, "Did you just take my picture?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, I just took your picture. It was for an art project." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And then they'll drive off. They won't even ask to see it or anything. Every once in a while, I get someone that's angry. And I haven't had a situation where I had someone really angry and I ended up using that photo, but you know, I would cross that bridge if I came to it. Like, how good is the photo versus do I need to not show this photograph because someone really didn't want their photo being shown? And I think in a situation where I'm photographing in a very kind of democratic way, and people, you know, everyone is presented in a very similar and equal way, I have less problems making photographs candidly. When I go into people's businesses or their homes or places that they free, you know, it's their community, and I'm not from there, you know, that's a whole other navigation of kind of like ethics of, you know, asking permission and whatnot.
So does knowing the subject's backstory then maybe influence the way you capture them on film?
Somewhat, yeah, I would say yes. I mean, part of photography, part of this personal work for me is meeting people and hearing their stories and making work that can speak to issues that are important to those people that are or the community that they're from. You know, I want a lot of this work to, as you'll see, I want the work to circulate within the community, not just be photographs of them that then go on the gallery wall. So like this work, while I do show it in galleries, you know, I want it to have kind of a dual life. Like I'm looking at trying to do an exhibition at Chungking Mansions of that work where I stick it up on stickers, like big vinyl stickers. So that's something that's I'm hoping to do in the future at some point when things maybe potentially calm down in Hong Kong, and I can go back there.
Wonderful. So before, and I know we want to make this conversation, but I want to ask you along the lines. How old were you, or you know, when you decided photography was like your passion? Like,
it would have been 2008, so I would have been about 25, 26.
Oh, okay.
You know, I spent a lot of time kind of messing around in my community college, you know, taking business classes and dropping them all the time because I just couldn't stand it until I finally figured out, you know, photography was what I wanted to do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for answering those. I think those are the ones we have right now, and I think we're dying to hear now. I'm sorry I interrupted. Let's get back to Chicago, right? And we're moving.
Yeah, there's a connection. So this you know, I was living in China as you know, I was living there on a tourist visa, and you know, I'd have to go to Hong Kong every so often so that I could renew you reset the clock and you can go back into China. So I was working there illegally, you know, there's a certain privilege of like living abroad with an American passport and working illegally. You can get away with so much that people can't get away with, you know, so easily here. You know, immigration is very deeply embedded in my family's history on my dad's side. My wife is an immigrant who's just moved here from China as well. So, I mean, there's this connection in immigration in a lot of my work. So the work in Chicago, which you're looking at here, is called Immigrant Owned. It was my thesis work in graduate school, and it's all small immigrant-owned businesses in Chicago. Photographs of interior space, just empty space, and environmental portraits of people in their work. Either they work there, they're employees, or they're owners, or whatnot. So, you know, I was talking a little bit about like, this is the personal work that I like. I do it because I want to do it, and I'm interested in it, and it, you know, it's fulfilling to me to make this work. But, you know, ideally you make this work and there's some kind of outlet for it that can also help you make a living. And up until recently, that wasn't the case for me. All my personal work I would do on my own and put it on my website, and people like it, and photo editors want to see it, and then that potentially gets me a job, but it doesn't directly make a living for me. So just very recently, I got hired by the city of Chicago to do these, and their COVID-19 PSAs that they're using my thesis work to let people know about you know, the latest information on coronavirus. So these are about to go up. They're not even on. They're going to be on billboards, and they'll be up in a couple of weeks in the city of Chicago. I think I'm going to get at least 2 billboards, this one and the other one. and maybe as many as 3 or 4, I think. We'll see.
Getting chills, Jonathan. These pictures are giving me chills. They're so stunning, because I was going to ask you, has this COVID, you know, has this really impacted your work? And I see that this is stunning what you're doing. Sorry, I just had to add that. It's stunning.
Well, so I was on that I'm on that pre-qualified list for public art, and so this came out of that. I applied to that list, and I applied, and I got accepted. I'm in their catalog, and then when opportunities like this come up, the city will reach out to you based on your work and say, "Hey, we've got this idea for this PSA. We think your work would be great for this." I never in my wildest dreams when I was making these images expected that this would be there. I never in my wildest dreams expected when I was doing the car culture project that it would end up in the New Yorker, for example.
Yeah.
So this project is kind of I've got kind of like 4 or 5 big projects that I'm working on. And this is one that's a little bit on hold right now, but these are portraits of someone. This is a portrait of a woman who has student loan debt. A lot of people can relate. And you can see the image on the left. The size is 66 by 90 inches total. And on the right is a close-up. And the kind of little twist with this work, I like twists, as you can tell. There's the paper is made 100% from shredded $20 bills. So what you're looking at is her student loan debt physically embodied on the wall. And there wasn't enough room in the gallery to show it all, but there's literally supposed to be 9.5 portraits equal to just under $80,000 of student loan debt. So the idea being you can walk into a gallery and physically see what someone's student loan debt looks like. You know, numbers are very abstracted, and it's very hard to kind of, you know, wrap your head around what $80,000 of student loan debt looks like. So they're really big, yeah. And they're all handmade. So the photographs are taken digitally. I make digital negatives and print them on an inkjet, and then I contact print these in the darkroom. But the paper is all handmade. I make the paper myself, and I also then hand print these in the darkroom. So it's very labor intensive. You know, takes days and days to make 12 sheets of, a couple days to make 12 sheets of paper, a couple days to print them, you know, so it's, you know, months of work just to put this on the wall.
So would you be willing to
additionally,
share?
my Diane Dammeyer Fellowship, which I'm in the middle of right now, these were, this is from apartments that are set up by Heartland Alliance for refugees that are being resettled in the US. So these are apartments that are set up for refugees before they arrive here. And this is what they look like when they get to the United States. Here's your new apartment. This is what's in your fridge, potentially. You know, what's stocked in your bathroom. So they're in this very kind of in-between space. Everything is wrapped, you know, like, but it's different than when we move into apartments here, like, because, you know, you get them empty. They don't usually come furnished. They don't usually come with, you know, your deodorant and toothbrush and all these things. And they kind of have this in-between kind of feeling, the apartments, that, you know, in the same way that like being a refugee is kind of being in transit and in between. So this is something I'm kind of working on. It's not really fleshed out yet, but I'm sharing it to show you what I'm currently working on.
So Jonathan, can I ask for maybe I'm going to bring a couple questions together if you're willing to share a little bit about your creative process. So a little bit about your creative process, like maybe if you give us a glimpse into, you know, what makes you decide to use color or black and white, or to create $20 bills to demonstrate, you know, what is your and then maybe what a little bit about, you know, what draws you or helps you decide on a theme for your project? Where do you, I heard you say at the beginning you get it because of your, you know, some of your background, but maybe if you would be willing to share with our participants today a little bit about your creative process and how you make some of these decisions.
Yeah, so like the car culture project, I just really liked this guy's work, the Philip Lorca. I thought the work was beautiful, and I thought, I just need to try this. I need to like see if I can do this level of work. And there was some technical things that were kind of a little mystifying to me, and I wanted to like kind of problem solve them. And so the technical aspects of it kind of were enticement, as well as the kind of cinematic quality of the photographs. So for me, it was an exercise. It was like a self-assignment to try to figure out how to do something. And then it was thinking about it and analyzing it and going, well, yeah, I achieved it. I achieved what I set out to do and copied this guy's photographs, but how can I push this further? And I just had to keep thinking about it and talking with people. So I kept talking with my professors and thinking about, how do I push this into another place so that it becomes more my own? And then, you know, I used to keep a visual journal, and I would keep notes and do all these things. And when I didn't have a lot of ideas for projects, that journal was a great way to kind of keep track of them. But then I got to a point where like I had a huge list of things I wanted to do and try. And now I'm to the point where I have too many projects, and I need to focus on the ones that, you know, are right here in front of me. If I start another project right now, it would be terrible. So I basically have a project for when I'm in LA. I have another project for when I'm in Hong Kong. I have three projects for when I'm here in Chicago. And I just kind of work on them. And then if I get a little overwhelmed with one of them, then I kind of like, you know, maybe take a break and work on the other one. Or if I have deadlines, like I have a show coming up or something that needs to be done, I'm working on what, you know, I'm always working on like what the next deadline is. So part of the thing that makes me produce is that I know I have something coming up, and I have to work quickly because I know I've got that exhibition in a couple months. You know, so like I'm trying to put together a book of the car culture work for the show in August. So now that's like on my list. It's been on my list for 10 years, but now I'm finally getting to it.
Exactly. Well, thanks for sharing about that. Yeah, keep on. This is awesome.
This is also part of my fellowship work. It's at the Refugee and Immigrant Community Service Center in the Belmont area of Chicago, and where they do English classes. And my wife has been this is a very low level English class, but my wife says English is much better than this, but she was taking English classes there as well. So my fellowship has become really interesting because my wife went from being like, you know, she came here as an immigrant herself, but then through the fellowship, I was visiting these places. I thought, oh, this would be good for you. And she goes and became a participant there. And she's now working at Heartland Alliance in one of the facilities where I was spending time for my fellowship. So it's been kind of a really interesting journey that way. The Heartland Alliance does a lot of stuff with refugees, immigrants, asylum seekers. And one of the things they do is like vocational training. So this is a demonstration at the Peninsula Hotel to like of what the hospitality workers do when they have to clean the rooms. It's really interesting because the Peninsula Hotel is actually from Hong Kong, and it's a block away from Chungking Mansions where I was making the work. So there's these kind of like really kind of just coincidental things that happen. You know, I'm halfway around the world making this other project, and you know, there's this connection to, you know, to what I'm doing here. The work I'm doing with Heartland, I'm kind of largely exploring all of the programs they do with refugees and immigrants and asylum seekers, and kind of just trying different things, photographing these empty apartments. I've been working on getting access to these centers that take care of unaccompanied children that come over the border from Mexico to then photograph in these spaces. I can't photograph the children. There's privacy concerns that, you know, I wouldn't even ask anyway. But additionally, I've been meeting people that are like, this gentleman went through the hospitality training program. He works in a hotel here in Chicago, but he was, you know, a refugee who came here, and he's been sharing with me his paperwork. I'm very much interested in the paperwork and bureaucracy of immigration, and how photography is incorporated into that. So you can see I've redacted information that he wants redacted, but also to to share certain things of the process of immigration. Like this paperwork might then get incorporated into some other larger piece, like my money project, where the documents might become the substrate for the photograph. I don't know. It's kind of a bunch of.
Can I ask you a question about that? The medium that you used for that, in terms of on that student loan debt project, Are you willing to share? I don't know if it's your trade secret, but
Oh, no, they're just cyanotypes.
what do you coat the paper with to make it receptive to darkroom processes?
They're just cyanotypes.
Cyanotype. Oh,
Cyanotypes, very simple photographic process. The hard part would be making the paper, having a darkroom with big enough space to then develop those, and then also having big inkjet printers to make big negatives. It's a lot of expensive equipment to kind of make all of it. Luckily, I had some good access at Columbia College. On the documents here, if you notice, the date of birth for everyone in the family is January 1st, which is a very common thing with refugees. They change everyone's birthday to January 1st for just sort of simplistic processing reasons. And so like I think most, if not all, refugees just literally share the same birthday of January 1st with the year they were born. So there's a whole dehumanizing kind of aspect of the process of like literally losing your birthday when you agree to, be resettled in the United States through this, So these are little things that I'm kind of looking at. And there was another document I'm not showing here, but that like refugees have to start paying back their plane tickets that they get to come here within a couple months of arriving. Your $1,000 plane ticket, you have to start making payments on it. So he shared that documentation with me. That's been that way forever. That's not a new thing. Yeah, it's the immigration kind of concern, our investigations and my work are kind of throughout. We can talk more about that in the Q&A if people are interested. So I'm going to move on to not my personal work. This is my editorial work. This is work that magazines are hiring me to do. That's, for stories online or stories in print magazines. This was a story I got hired to photograph a bunch of mom and pop video game stores across the US. I spent 6 weeks driving across the United States photographing video game stores and people that owned video game stores. The same magazine hired me to photograph these in different stories. The story on the left, this is Tetsuya Nomura. He's the character designer for Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, very well-known games. And Chris Metzen on the right from Blizzard, who's the designer for Warcraft, Diablo, and StarCraft. So these are fun. These are great. It's great to get paid and go meet some really interesting people. But this is work that like pays the bills. This is not, but it's fun work that pays the bills. But it doesn't pay a lot. It's kind of it's sometimes you even do these jobs, not even to make a little bit of money, but just to get good portfolio pieces. You're not making a lot of money, but it's just another way to show what you can do. This is Vitor Serrano, is the Portuguese Consul General of Macau, or was the Consul General of Macau from Portugal. This is Joseph Tsai, the Executive Vice Chairman of Alibaba, and Maggie Wu, the CFO of Alibaba. If people that don't know, Alibaba is like the Amazon of China. It's huge. And Jack Ma, who's the CEO, he's the I can't remember his chairman, CEO. I forgot I think it's CEO. He's like the richest man in China, and this is his number 2 guy and CFO for the company. I photographed these in Hong Kong for institutional investor. This is water heater testing for Kaiwa Gas Tech, and did this in Guangzhou. This was for a company that had kind of an internal publication that needed photographs of their gas testing facility. Interesting, weird, glad to do it. It doesn't pay a whole lot. The Ritz-Carlton Club in Macau, doing food and interior. So, you can see that my work that I'm doing for these magazines, looks quite different than what I'm doing personally, right? And the genres are very different.
So, Jonathan, what would you say would be a good balance for your portfolio? Personal passion work versus projects that pay the bills. Whatever you're finding.
Well, what I find is that photo editors don't want to see anything you've actually done for another magazine. They don't care. Most of them. they want to see your personal work. They want to see what you're interested in. That's the stuff that gets you in the door. That's the stuff they're most interested in. You don't put it all on your website. Keep a little back so that if you get a meeting, you get to go in, you can show them something that they don't see on your website. You know, they can Google you, they can find this stuff. You might put, I sometimes put these together in portfolios, like a PDF or something. So if someone asks you, you do this, I can just send it to them. Yeah, here's what I've done. But it's like, this does not go on my website side by side generally with my personal work. Sometimes in the blog, I'll mention that I'm doing some of these things. It's been a while since I updated that. But none of this stuff really, like, you know, you'd have to do a lot of editorial jobs to make a decent living. And most photographers will tell you that it's just not a viable way to make a living. If you live really, really cheaply and you're willing to kind of do things on a shoestring, you can make some money. But the editorial jobs will often lead to other jobs. So I have friends that do food photography for editorial clients for magazines, but then maybe they go to the Ritz-Carlton Club to photograph it for the magazine, and then the Ritz-Carlton Club calls them back and says, hey, we have a menu we need to do, and you get hired to do that menu. So editorial work can often be kind of like your foot in the door to the commercial clients where you can make your real money. So moving on to commercial clients, this is not bread and butter. This is like the largest paying jobs I do. This is like, I could live for a year on this job. But I live really cheaply. You know, I don't have an expensive apartment or expensive car or what have you. But you know, the money that I can make from a job like this can keep me going for a year if I really need to. Like, I can stretch it out. So this is, you know, headshots of lawyers for a law firm in Chicago, photograph, and you know, they wanted these portraits, and I convinced them to also do these because they're more interesting, and I have better portfolio stuff, and you know, they'll pay a little more for retouching 2 portraits, but they get a better product. I get better portfolio stuff. So one of the things I always do is when people ask me, you know, oh, we want you to do this, but I see the possibility of doing something different as well, I always kind of push a little. Like the video game stuff, I initially was hired just to photograph the outsides of the stores. That's it, just the exterior. And I was like, let me do some portraits of people in the stores. Let me photograph the interiors. And, you know, and then they ended up using all of that in the story, and the story looked that much better. So I always kind of push clients or editor, whoever is asking me to do stuff, to do something that makes it more interesting for me, to do something that makes a better portfolio piece for me, something that's gonna kind of get my foot in the door somewhere else. So like this is a screenshot of their website and the image on the left as I shot it, and then how it was used on the website. These are the lawyers that actually work there in the space, in their office.
Beautiful. Do you shoot only digital, or do you shoot film, or is it a mix?
I haven't shot film in a while. I do shoot film. I mean, but it hasn't, I would say I haven't done it in a while, just for sort of, I mean, like the cyanotypes are done in the darkroom, but like the files were shot digitally, and then, you know, but you know, there is some work on my website that was shot on film. All the black and white stuff, the portraits in Long Beach were done film. You know, I can shoot with a 4x5 if I need to, you know, it's more sort of like money for me. I can't justify spending the money on film right now. And if I need to print stuff really big, my digital camera is, you know, like plenty good enough to print, you know, something 40x60. So this is the lawyers in their very, like this stuff, you know, very posed and kind of produced and lit. And I didn't have a picture. I was going to put it in here, but you know, like on this kind of job, I work with a crew. I have hair and makeup. I have a stylist who's arranging props and chairs and arranging the space. I have a first assistant who's helping me set up lighting and watching my computer. And then I have a production assistant who's running errands and doing things for us. So, you know, it's like a team of 5 people to do this kind of work. And then I do product work. So after I left Cal State Long Beach, I worked and did e-commerce work at a place I hated forever. When I left there, I started, you know, I do e-commerce work for people on the side, and then I also will do like this kind of more advertising kind of level product work. So these are handbags for a designer handbag company, and not cheap. So the other thing is you never know when one job is going to lead to another. So like this job literally led to the lawyer job, because the woman who runs this line, she's a lawyer. She works in the law firm. I did this job for her, handled it really well, and then her law firm was looking for a photographer, the introduction, that's how that introduction gets made. There's always connections between one job and another job, or you do this thing, it gets published, and then you get into something else. Like, it's like putting your work out there, putting yourself out there, and things start to happen. Another image from that. This is another screenshot from the website. So I'm doing, photographs of the bags on white, just e-commerce style stuff with models and without models. And then I'm doing stuff like this, where I'm doing art documentation of exhibitions. Pays about the same as my editorial jobs, but there's a lot of them. There's always people wanting me to photograph their exhibitions. It's relatively easy. I could do this by myself with a tripod and my camera. I don't need a big crew. I don't need a lot of equipment. So it's, this is bread and butter work. There's like tons of it always. And I'm then doing stuff like this, where I'm documenting people's artwork in a studio. I'm currently doing this for a museum on the side, a new museum that has like a bunch of paintings that they need me to do. So I actually got hired as a consultant to build their photo studio with all this equipment you're seeing. And now I, go in there and I photograph their art collection. This is one of the few jobs I've got that's still kind of going on despite coronavirus, So talking about diversifying your practice, this is being able to do some product work and event work and other things allows me to, when I can't go out and be in crowds because all that stuff is shut down, I can't go out and photograph in those kinds of jobs right now. This stuff is still happening for me. I literally was photographing there today, and then I left there and I photographed another artist's work in her studio after that, before I came here, before I came home to do this. So my event work, you might know Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. I was her official photographer for one night randomly. The American Writers Museum had me working with them, and then they told me they had this, that she was coming to talk about her children's book, and I was the only photographer allowed to go around freely while the U.S. Marshals kept all the other media in a little segregated area. I had free reign to walk around and photograph, and I honestly could not say, she could not meet a nicer person. She was like the nicest person you ever met. And, was very aware that I was trying to take photographs and would make sure she turned around to let me take a photograph at key spots. And, she was really wonderful. And then even made sure to ask someone to take a picture with me so I could have a picture with her. And I didn't even ask. I wouldn't normally ask because I'm working, but she suggested it so that I could have a picture because she's just that nice. I do event work like this for the DePaul College of Law, their public interest law auction. This is the Museum of Contemporary Photography. So they're holding a photograph that I made. So I did the photograph in the frame of the two. This is Biff and Buzz Ruttenberg. They donated $1 million to the museum. I did the portrait of them for the museum, and then I was photographing the gala while they were presenting my photograph to them. I'm the event photographer as well. So there's like it just goes to show that I'm doing like all these different random things that you would never know that the guy who shot this image is the guy that's doing the car culture stuff, or these photo booths that I do at events where I set up lights and a background and people come and take their pictures. This is Kenneth Joseph, and he's a very famous photographer, and he was in my photo booth just earlier this year. So yeah, the kind of stuff I do is kind of all over the map sometimes, but and you wouldn't know that I'm doing all these things because on my website, I only show certain things. But I pay the bills doing a lot of different work that you'll never see on my website typically.
So I would love to ask you, so out of all your work, and you mentioned, I mean, literally stunning, what image or project or series are you most proud of?
I don't think I can say whether I'm most proud of one thing or not. I mean, my stuff here in Chicago is really, my immigrant-owned project is really great. I don't have enough time to get back to it, but the Dammeyer work's been really challenging, and I've been learning a lot about the communities that I'm kind of working with there. The car culture work, I'm proud of the fact that it like has gotten press and has gotten me places, but it's fun to do. It's like a fun technical exercise, and it's just like fun to drive around and make these pictures, but it doesn't have as kind of much of a connection to a social issue or deeper meaning that I enjoy, that I'm interested in. You know, so the Chunking Mansions project, I think all my work kind of connected to immigration and stuff I'm kind of more proud of and connected to, but the student loan debt thing too, I'm hoping to get that stuff going more soon, because I think it's like really timely. Like, this is a discussion that needs to be happening all the time, like every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you be willing to share a little bit about what artists or photographers inspire you today?
Oh,
I know you mentioned one at the beginning, but
yeah, well, DeCorsia was a big influence early on. DeCorsia, Crutzen. I go through phases, like the photographer I used to work for, he used to make a joke about how like one day he thought he was oh man, he's like, oh, this week I'm Elliot Erwitt, and this week I'm so and so, you know, like, so I kind of did that for a while, where I kind of would, you know, like kind of try to emulate a photographer that I liked, and it's a good exercise to do. You learn stuff. I don't know. Taryn Simon's really amazing. I think the work she does is fantastic. My teacher from Columbia, Dawood Bey, is amazing. All the professors there, Jay Wolke is amazing. Kelly Connell. You know, my professors from Cal State Long Beach were pretty amazing. Todd Gray, he's having a really good moment right now. Like I last like Whitney Biennial and stuff. You know, I saw him at Photo LA, and Mark Riddell, Kyle Liddell, Rebecca Sidler. All of them my teachers have been a big influence on me. Even if my work doesn't look like them. You know, so yeah.
I don't think they'd want your work to look like theirs, right? I mean, you know.
No,
I have a question, and this may be a much different question, and this has come up a couple times in our chat. So thinking back, you mentioned at the very beginning that you were taking business classes at your community college, and you were like, why am I wasting my time with business classes? And I totally understand that. What non-photography or non, you know, arts related classes have you found helpful as you've moved out in your career?
Well, I have a minor in anthropology, which I got from Cal State Long Beach.
I see the connection now with your work.
Yeah. I think the risk you run, you do run a risk if you go straight photography. And I mean, I took photography as my main thing, but if you don't have other interests besides photography, and specifically the technical aspects of photography, you end up making work that's very generic, very boring. Like you don't even realize it necessarily when you're doing it, but you know, your work starts looking like a lot of other people's work. And you know, the more interesting of a person you are, and the more kind of different things you're interested in, will make your work more interesting. So like living abroad will just make your work more interesting. You know, like spending a year out of the country will make your work more interesting. You know, learning about anthropology, reading a lot of news will make your work more interesting. You know, like any of those things, if you can then make the leap between the input into your output, you know?
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. So we're getting lots of questions on the chat. So I'm going to start throwing out some that might seem more random to this, but this is a wonderful question. So how do you solicit commercial work besides networking or without, and without, you know, sort of the environment of COVID right now? Do you have an agent? Are you repping yourself? Are you working with a publisher? I know you mentioned you're represented in your bio. There was a mention there of that, but would you be able to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I get all my art documentation work and all of the event work. Like stuff comes from recommendations. You know, I did this thing for someone else, and someone recommends me to go do it. So, you know, I try never to just like do the bare minimum on a job. I would try to make sure it's like to the standard. Like if it was being like, if I was gonna, someone was asking me, if I was paying someone to do it for me, how I would want them to do it, because you never know when someone's going to recommend you to the next big job. So most of my work comes from recommendations. Like I haven't even updated my website in forever. I don't put a lot on social media. I don't really pay attention to my LinkedIn. You know, I don't do much of any of that. I don't send out an email list. I don't cold call a lot of editors. Sometimes when I'm going to be in New York, I do that to try to get meetings, but not that much. Most of my work comes from my network and from recommendations. So like, you know, all the people I went to school with, you know, I go, oh, that guy's doing really cool work. You know, and we become friends, and, you know, then that person moves to China and is like, hey, why don't you come out here and live in my apartment and take care of my jobs for a couple months? I'm going to go on vacation. And I'm like, yeah, sure. You know, and then I'm out there and I meet one of my friends from Cal State Long Beach is out there, and she's been doing a lot of work out there, and a couple jobs come her way that she can't do. And she goes, hey, John, do you want these? And like, you know, then I'm doing some of the jobs I showed you, you know, those were like literally handed to me from friends who couldn't do them or didn't want to do them. You know, so, you know, and I've done the same thing. There's times where I couldn't do something and I pass it to someone else. So, your network helps you out. So like anyone who thinks that this is a competition between you and your friends is like not going to get very far, you know.
Solid advice.
Yeah, you like the people you're going to school with, your teachers, all of them, all my opportunities have come through mostly those kinds of avenues. More now, still now, but like sometimes I apply for things. There's like an open call for a show or a grant or something. And I'm making more money now. Like my fellowship pays me. So like the Diane Dammeyer Fellowship was a $25,000 award, which, you know, it's enough to live on for a year and make the work. And then, you know, some freelance jobs pop up through the year and I supplement my income that way. But, you know, and then the public art commissions, you know, you get on that list and then they start offering you things, and stuff just kind of pops into my inbox most of the time. And I'm not out actively looking. I'm going to be, because I need to. But as soon as I get to the moment where I have like, I can take a breath, then I'll like, okay, what part of my photography career am I most interested in expanding? Do I want to do more photo booths? Not so much. You know, when they come my way, you know, I'll do more of them. Do I want to do more art documentation? Not so much. So but when people keep recommending me, you know. Yeah. So, but the other thing is, if you put all that on your website, you're going to become even more known for that. So if you don't like doing event work, but it pays the bills, do the event work, but don't advertise yourself as an event photographer. Advertise yourself as the photographer you want to be. You know, the one doing personal projects, socially engaged work, and getting grants and having exhibitions, and, you know, getting stipends to do your exhibitions, and, you know, getting those kinds of funds to kind of have your, you know, to support yourself as an artist. So it's like you do a little less of this and a little more of that. So you just like wean off of the thing you don't like, and it could be a real big trap to like get into like an e-commerce job where you're getting paid $15 an hour or $20 an hour working for a company, and it's great because it has benefits, but you're working 40 hours a week and you're just dead tired and you never make your personal work. I mean, I did that for a couple of years, you know, and it was soul sucking. It was terrible. But I did learn stuff. I recommend doing crappy jobs in photography and learning things and then getting out, so that you can then, you're always better off making the money on your own. If you can kind of handle your own business, you'll make more money that way.
Okay, I know we're getting close, so I have a few more questions. The burning question is, can you share with us your website and your blog information?
The blog that's not really got much on it is on my website and my Instagram. I'll be updating it at some point. Yeah, so that's I put it in the chat.
Oh, wonderful. So it's in the chat, everybody. Everybody copy and paste. And I think you can actually click the ellipsis and you can save the whole chat window so you won't miss it. Okay.
Sure.
The other question we have is, let's see, what has been your most challenging assignment and why?
Assignment.
Or project, perhaps.
The Dammeyer Fellowship has been really challenging. It was a lot of emails and meetings and training. I had to go through FBI background checks and training to get access to some of the facilities I was going to be photographing in, and months of introductions, and meet this person and they introduce you to the next person and the next person, and they all have to kind of vet you, and then you do like a week of online training plus background checks, and then they go, okay, this is the date we're going to do the photos, middle of March 2020. and then coronavirus pops up, and then that's all shut down because they don't want anyone in the facilities that doesn't need to be there. So a global pandemic will put a big damper on your plan.
Art.
Yeah, so I'm trying to pivot some things. I've got some ideas. I've made enough kind of like inroads in the project, but what form it will ultimately take, I'm not really sure yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when is your Chungking Mansions book going to be published?
Oh man, I've got like a lot of work to do. So I will share with people. Let me get the link. There is more of the work you can see online. It's in a hidden gallery that I don't really share with everyone, but I'll share it with you guys if anyone wants to see it. So there's more of the work there. You can see like about 30 images, which I've had in a show. A book is gonna take longer because I've probably got 50 or 60 more images I have to edit up and figure out what would be in there and work with someone on an essay. And I think the car culture book will come first just because there's exhibitions in the works. Yeah, and then I'd like to get back to the debt project. I don't think I'm going to be back in Hong Kong for at least a year. So that's probably the one that's most on hold.
Yeah. Well, I know we only have about 2 minutes, but I'm going to ask you one last question if we can catch it in here before we wrap. And that is, have you ever turned a job down because you didn't agree with with their business practice or philosophically with the assignment?
And the hustle is real, I mean, like those lawyers, like I could have said, well, I don't want to do work with lawyers who work with big pharmaceutical companies. But I really wanted to pay off my credit card debt. and it's funny because I think people kind of do this, like it's black and white, people are good or bad. And it's not like that. Like the woman who's the lawyer, like the woman who owns the handbag company, she's a wonderful woman, and she's very, very progressive and has a lot of just supporting, like her whole brand and her with her handbags is supporting professional women. And I introduced her to one of my friends who's an artist, a photographer, and she's featuring her work, this young female photographer who's kind of killing it, and like featuring her work on the website with the bags. And but she's trying to do a lot of good, I think. And I think the law firm, they do a fair amount of pro bono work, like it's not so simple, so I don't like to put people into categories like make those kinds of judgments right away. I mean, I'm not giving them a discount for sure. Like I'm like when I'm doing work for a law firm, I'm charging them my full rate, where so that's kind of, I think, the way it is, I mean, you could, I don't necessarily see it. Like, I guess if like Philip Morris wanted me to do a tobacco ad, I wouldn't do that,
Right.
But you know, something that like is directly promoting something that I'm very much against. You know, like if someone wanted me to do something for like, you know, a Donald Trump campaign, anti-immigration MAGA campaign or something, there's no way. Like, you know, like I couldn't do that. You know, I'm sure there's lines, you know, but I've never had to turn anything down for those reasons.
Yeah, I know we're at time, and I think maybe if you can do this one in just a couple seconds, do you have a dream project or dream model or subject?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, like, I think I'm doing things I really like right now. I'm, you know, and I'm always interested where it's going to go. I think that's the thing, you know. I'll just say one thing though. If anyone is really interested in talking to me, I know we have Cal State Long Beach students here, and I make this offer every time I do a talk with students and alumni. If anyone is interested in talking with me more, they're welcome to email me. It's not, you know, it's my email's publicly on my website, so feel free to email me if you want to talk with me, or, you know, if I have some time, I can look at your work or whatever, you know, any way I can help. And if there was questions that didn't get answered, you know, feel free to shoot me an email, kind of thing.
Jonathan, thank you so much on behalf of the CSUB alumni. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna say thank you. I'm gonna send it back to Noemi to close us out. And thank you.
Thank you, Kim and Jonathan. It was very engaging and it's great work, Jonathan. We're very proud to have you as one of our alumnus. And today I invite you to follow us on social media at CSUB Alumni to learn about future 49er chats. And also just a reminder, this was recorded and it will be on our website soon. So thank you everyone for joining and have a great day.